A crystal ball is in for the top prospect in 2024. We'll tell you which lucky team got the nod. Plus, it's in the name. Elijah Rushing, the top edge rusher in the class, has set a visit where he's headed and where the top prospects out west stand in their recruitments. All that and more as the college football recruiting show starts right now. Alongside Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud. Submit your questions in the chat. We will answer them at the end. Shout out to Jason, who's already in the chat saying best Cruton show. We will live up to that moniker. Also, please like the video. We're trying to get to 50 likes today. It also spreads the word about this show. 50, it's a big number, but Blair, I think we can do it. And as a reminder, we will still be going strong even through this dead period. So tell your friends, recruiting never sleeps. So you hit that like button and we will hit the headlines. A crystal ball for the top player in the 2024 class, Dylan Raiola. Mike Schaefer of Husker 247 predicts Nebraska to land the #1 quarterback. His dad's number is retired there, and his uncle Donovan is currently the O-line coach, so it's really not hard to find those connections. But Blair, how does Raiola and Rule sound to you?
It sounds like a perfect match, at least in terms of fit and importance. I believe that there's not a more important recruit for any other school in the country than Raiola is to Rule and Nebraska. So if the Huskers can beat out Georgia and USC this spring, that whatever happens in Lincoln will be unmistakable.
All right, the coordinator carousel continues to spin. Within a span of just minutes, we learned that Georgia offensive coordinator Todd Monken took a job with the Baltimore Ravens, and then Mike Bobo was elevated to the coordinator position. It was the quickest coaching search. It's now complete. Blair, from a recruiting perspective, how do you like this continuity?
Well, Mike Bobo knows the program really well and has numerous five-star wins on his resume. He was the primary recruiter for guys like Matthew Stafford and Aaron Murray. He was also in on the likes of Nick Chubb, Terry Godwin, and Sonny Michel. So if we're looking at this strictly from a recruiting angle, I really like Georgia's chances to continue building on the nation's #1 class in 2024.
Elsewhere, after a slightly longer search, Miami has its new offensive coordinator. The U is expected to hire Houston's Shannon Dawson to run the offense. You look at his track record and QB developer comes to mind. So Blair, what do you think of this hire?
I think this hire is going to be really, really good, but it's also going to put the pressure on Miami to win recruiting battles for elite offensive skill talent in this cycle. He develops quarterbacks, but he also needs the weapons to distribute the football. Shannon Dawson is known for his aerial attack, so the Canes need that roster to fit the scheme. And I like it on the surface, but let's see how they do on the trail this summer.
Well, speaking of Miami, the top edge rusher in the 2024 class has locked in a visit. Elijah Rushing and his family plan to check out a couple more schools, but Miami is the only one currently locked in. What kind of player could Cristobal potentially land here?
A really long edge rusher with tremendous get off and a quick first step burst. I love his ability to get after the quarterback off the edge. He's got a really deep arsenal of counter moves as well. He's got all the tools physically and technique wise to be an NFL player for such a long time.
All right, 50 likes, 50 is our goal. I know our next guest would love to see that number as well. Let's welcome in our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, for all the latest notes and intel. Steve, we just talked about him. Blair gave us a nice summary of Elijah Rushing, the player, but what can you tell us about the prospect and his recruitment?
Yeah, I spoke to his dad this week. He told me that the Miami visit is locked in for the first weekend of March, and that's the only visit currently scheduled for Elijah Rushing, but they want to take several more spring visits. Ohio State, who recently offered in January, they want to get to Columbus and hang out with Larry Johnson in the Buckeyes. Notre Dame is another school they want to get back to. Also mentioned Oregon and Colorado. So those are 5 visits that are on the radar right now for the Rushing camp. And Blair, I know there's some other major contenders for this blue chipper.
Yeah, I would think some of the West Coast schools are also going to be in the mix there. His brother Cruz was a walk-on at Florida, was previously committed to Oregon. He is now back home in Tucson playing for the Arizona Wildcats. I would assume that a lot of the West Coast schools are going to have a lot of pull. The Oregons, the Washington, the two LA schools made his top 12 as well, USC and UCLA. He really enjoyed his visits there. I like Notre Dame early on in the recruiting battle. He's liked his visit to South Bend previously. This is going to be, Steve, as you know, a national recruitment. When you think about the number one edge rusher and how exciting those battles are, you think back to Keon Keeley, and it seemed like a tug of war there for a number of months. I think we're going to see something very similar with Elijah Rushing. He's that type of prospect.
Yeah, similar to Keon Keeley, he has all the intangibles you're looking for in addition to those tangibles on the field. So that's why he's so coveted by the Notre Dames of the world as well. He was at Washington's junior day at the end of the January, which was also a great experience for him.
We'll see if his recruitment is as dramatic as Keon Keeley's was. Meanwhile, a few spots ahead of Rushing in our rankings is five-star safety KJ Bolden. He is locked in to visit the Buckeyes in June. Steve, who else is involved?
Yeah, Blair reported that news. Spent some time with KJ Bolden this past weekend at the Battle Las Vegas 7-on-7 event. And Ohio State's a school that's been prominent in his recruitment since the beginning. He was at Ohio State's win over Notre Dame, returned for the game against Michigan. Perry Eliano, lead recruiter for the Buckeyes. He's related to Coach Eliano. And in talking to him recently about Ohio State, he just loves the future of the program. And I know behind the scenes he's talking to Ohio State a lot, and it's a very promising recruitment for the Buckeyes, but they got several contenders in this one. Georgia is a program that's been at the top or near the top for KJ Bolden. Clemson, he was recently back in Death Valley, and the Tigers are another program that he's super high on. And then Alabama, Tennessee, Florida State, a few other contenders for KJ Bolden. But in addition to that official visit to Ohio State in June, I also expect him to be back in Columbus for spring practice, and I think he'll make some rounds to his top schools for spring practices at those places as well.
Blair, what'd you see from KJ Bolden in Vegas?
Well, it's a little tough, as Steve, you know, in these 7-on-7 settings and these passing league tournaments, it's difficult to really judge safeties. And Emily, we got to get you out to one of those eventually. But KJ Bolden checks off a ton of boxes. He covers a lot of ground. I love his makeup speed. I love his ability to kind of scan the field. He's really instinctual. There's no run plays really, so it's all about reacting, and it's about reading the quarterback. And KJ Bolden's able to do all that. He's got really good speed. I wouldn't call him a burner, but I do think he eats a chunk of yards at a time. He's really, really dynamic in space. He's able to go up and make plays on the football. And I think he's got that competitiveness to him, that fuel, that I think that fire to not allow any completion. So I really like what I saw out of KJ Bolden this past weekend in Vegas.
You're right, Blair. I hope the bosses are watching there. Got to get me out to Vegas. You know what will help is hitting the like button on this video. We have like over 100 people watching, only 29 likes. Again, our goal is 50 likes. So if you hear the sound of my voice, smash that thumbs up button. All right, on the coaching front, the Georgia offensive shakeup, Monken off to the NFL. Mike Bobo elevated. We know the Dogs are in heavy pursuit of Dylan Raiola. So Steve, how does this change really affect Raiola's interest in the Bulldogs, if at all?
Well, talking to Raiola's dad earlier today and trading some texts with Dylan, I don't think at this moment it affects it much at all. Georgia's still one of the top contenders for the number one ranked player in the 24/7 Sports Player rankings. He's going to be back in Athens sometimes this spring. They're trying to figure out their visit schedule around training and baseball and some other things. But they know Mike Bobo. They've been around him and met him in person. And then Raiola's dad played with Matt Stafford for a long time. They're good friends, and Matt Stafford has said nothing but good things about Mike Bobo. And as Blair said at the beginning of the show, this is one of the top recruiters in the country for his position, and one of his most recent big wins on the trail when he was the offensive coordinator at South Carolina. He beat Georgia for Gunnar Stockton, who ultimately ended up at Georgia with some coaching carousel deals. But Mike Bobo's got chops on the trail. He builds really good relationships with prospects and families. He's got pedigree as a coach, and Georgia still remains one of the top contenders alongside Nebraska, USC, and Oregon. And we'll see what happens this next wave of visits he takes.
Steve, top 10 defensive lineman Justin Scott had set a commitment date for January 31st, and now we're in the middle of February. but he's locked in an official visit to Georgia for April. What's going on with Justin Scott, and how is his recruitment shaking up?
Yeah, our colleague Alan True with the news there on the official visit to Georgia. But this is a program that we've been keeping an eye on in the Justin Scott sweepstakes since Trey Scott went up to watch him play basketball in January, and they extended him a scholarship. He had a commitment date set. We liked Notre Dame at that time, but said keep an eye on Georgia. Then maybe he wasn't going to announce it was keep an eye on Georgia. Then the announcement was back on. It's keep an eye on Georgia. Announcement's off. Official visit set for Georgia, but these aren't the only two contenders for him. It's not just Notre Dame and Georgia. Alan True's here in Ohio State's a major factor in there. We know he had a great visit to USC. So those are a few other programs that are in the mix for Justin Scott as well.
All right, how about the top linebacker in 2024, Sammy Brown, scheduling some visits of his own. He recently locked in one for Oklahoma. So what do you know about the Sooners' pursuit?
Yeah, and he's been trying to get back out to Norman for a while now, and they're going to just do it over their spring break, the first week of April. The day is not completely locked in, but they know that's where they want to spend their spring break, Norman, Oklahoma. And obviously he's got a long-standing relationship with Brent Venables. He's been attending Clemson camp for years on years, and so that relationship is carried over to Norman. And I think Oklahoma, they're trying to make a move on a couple schools that are at the top of his list. In Georgia and Clemson. He was at Georgia's national championship parade celebrating the second straight title, and then he was at Clemson's Elite Junior Day. He's frequented those campuses numerous times and has great relationships with Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann in Athens, and Dabo Sweeney and Coach Goodwin at Clemson. And then another school that's certainly near the top of his list right now is Ohio State. He's been up to Columbus, has had some great experiences there, really likes Coach Knowles and the fit in that defense, and has really hit it off with Coach Laurinaitis as well.
Daniel Calhoun is another prospect that is busy circling dates on his official visit calendar, Steve. He's the number 3 rated offensive tackle in the 24 class. Bama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, all pursuing him. What's the latest in the recruitment of Daniel Calhoun?
Yeah, you named the 4 schools that he has a keen eye on. He's locked in official visits in June for Georgia the first weekend and Alabama the second weekend. And although Florida and Tennessee and maybe some other programs are schools that he's still high on and communicating with, I think that they're trying to catch up to where Alabama and Georgia stand in this recruitment. Again, he's been to both places numerous times. His dad played at Alabama. He loves the history of Nick Saban and has built a really good relationship with Coach Wolford over there and loves the track record of player development. But certainly Georgia and the new standard there and competing against the best in practice and getting to know Coach Searles and Coach Smart and being in that atmosphere is also exciting to him. But those will be big official visits as his process winds down in June. And we'll see if the Gators are involved and maybe some other programs make a move.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you so much. Be sure to check out new episodes of the Wiltfong Whip Around every Monday on the 247 Sports YouTube page. We are 2 likes away from 50, so smash that like button. Would love to see us get to that number because we've got a lot more show left to go. Blair, you wear many hats for us, and we love you for it. This past weekend, you put on the scouting hat and took a trip to Vegas for the Battle 7-on-7 tournament. You told us a little bit about your trip there, but you saw prospects from 2024, 2025, beyond. So give me a preview of what I'm going to see when I attend this event next year. What was it like?
Well, I thought it was a really good event, and Battle usually is. It draws a lot of the top club teams from across the country regionally. We had teams from Florida, from New Orleans, from Pennsylvania, the Playmakers 215, the area code from Philadelphia. They actually won the tournament. So you have a lot of really good talent trying to compete regionally. And it was exciting because it's Super Bowl weekend. I think everyone is kind of, they have that taste in their mouth of wanting to watch football and play football. And so I thought it brought a lot of really good intensity from the players. And for the most part, it was difficult because I think a lot of these teams were missing key components of their players and of the rosters. But for the most part, I thought it was a really, really good event with a lot of loaded talent.
Sounds like fun. Can't wait till I go next year. Thank you, everybody, for getting us to 50 likes. Now we're going for 100. Also, as a reminder, if you want to be a part of the chat, it is the place to be. We've got our director of research dropping in some good nuggets there, Ryan McGrady. Also, Steve Wiltfong has hopped into the chat. If you're wondering, where is the chat? I don't see it on my page. That's because you are not subscribed. You have to subscribe to the 247 Sports YouTube channel to be a part of the fun there. Let's continue the fun here. In four-star Miles Lockhart was one of the headliners, as you know, evident by his stacked recruitment. He's got teams like Ohio State, Oregon, Utah, Colorado involved in his recruitment. You put in a crystal ball, though, for Ohio State. So what kind of prospect is he, and why do you like the Buckeyes?
He's a really tough corner, a player that I think really wants that one-on-one coverage. I think he welcomes that challenge of having to face the other team's best receiver, and he usually aces that test. I really like his competitiveness. I love his ability to flip his hips and make plays on the football deep. He can really cover ground, and that's another thing that really stands out to me about him. And I think he's tailor-made for what Ohio State likes to do in the secondary. You know, they haven't shied away from playing true freshmen in the past. He would be one of those, I think, candidates to be able to go in and add depth to that Ohio State secondary. I know he wants to take out a couple other visits. He told me he wants to get out to Utah. He wants to get out to Oregon. Colorado impressed him. He said he met Deion Sanders and called Deion the greatest player ever, not just the best corner ever, but the best player ever. He said that he's really elevating what the Buffs are doing on the recruiting trail. So that could be a program to monitor down the road. But right now, I like the Buckeyes. I like the relationship that Ohio State has built with Miles Lockhart, and I would think that they are in a really good spot heading into the official visits in June.
All right, how about four-star quarterback Isaac Wilson? He's, of course, the brother of Jets quarterback Zach Wilson and is one of the top quarterbacks out west. What kind of prospect is he?
Well, a really, really good one. He's, I think his anticipation skills, his ability to decipher defenses and thread the needle is really impressive. He had a tremendous junior season, getting to the state championship game there in the state of Utah. And he actually led his team, the Pink Outlaws from Salt Lake City and from that Utah area, to the championship game in this tournament. They had a 15-point lead early on. They blew that lead, so they were a little frustrated about that. But he's really good. I really like his composure back there. It'd be difficult, right, to be the brother of an NFL player who went number 2 overall and had the career that he had at BYU. But nothing really phases him. I think he embraces that, and he's really navigating the recruiting process slowly. He wants to take some official visits. Sounds like Arizona. Sounds like Oklahoma State. BYU, Utah, those 4 are in a really good spot. I wouldn't count out Miami. We talked about their new offensive coordinator, so he's trying to figure out what's going to happen there and whether or not that offer that they extended early in the process is still standing. That would be an interesting one. He's been on the Miami campus a couple times. Mario Cristobal actually offered him when he was at Oregon. So keep an eye on the Hurricanes as they start to kind of move forward now with a new offensive coordinator in tow.
All right, finally, Elijah Lofton, the 4-star tight end, is the top player in the state of Nevada. So how'd he do in his backyard this weekend?
He was dominant, Emily. Ooh. He's really physical, a player that kind of looks like a bulldozer running down the field, and you don't really want to get in front of him or get in his way because he's going to get the football. He's a deep threat, which is, really weird to say about a tight end, but he's probably their biggest playmaker in that offense. It's mostly made up of Bishop Gorman teammates, and he's by far their most productive player as a pass catcher, and that's pretty important in the passing league. From a recruiting standpoint, he took visits to Arizona State and to Texas back in January. Really liked both schools. He said ASU is prioritizing him, and we know that Kenny Dillingham is trying to be a force out west, and what better way to do that than to go to Vegas and go and recruit the best player from Bishop Gorman. He liked Texas. He said he met up with Coach Jeff Banks, the tight ends coach, the position coach that would be, kind of leading the charge for him. He really likes what the Longhorns are building. He wants to get back to both schools for officials. Miami is the wild card right now. He hasn't visited recently. He does have the offer, and the comparison for him is Brevin Jordan. He's a tight end with the Houston Texans, played at Miami, also played at Bishop Gorman. So a lot of people call him Mini Brevin. So Elijah Lofton, keep an eye on Miami as well for him. But those are the 3 schools right now that are standing out to the 4-star tight end.
Man, I heard Miami a lot in that last segment. The U certainly getting busy. Well, Blair, this tournament is one of many trips you've taken to evaluate prospects this season. It's hard to forget, of course, the trip to Hawaii for the Polynesian Bowl. That should probably be the trip that I'm pushing here. But our next guest was also there with you, and he, like you, interviewed some players, but he also had the tables turned on him. Let's roll the clip.
How are you feeling? We've been here for a couple of days now.
I love it.
What you liking?
I love it here. I love it here. I love the food. I love the people. I love the culture. I love the talent. I love the beaches. I love the weather. It's home.
What can you not love? What can you not love,
I don't think you cannot not love anything here, man. It's got the aloha spirit.
Hey, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yep, that is our national recruiting analyst, Greg Biggins, being interviewed by USC prospect Malachi Nelson. Greg, explain to us how this happened. What in the world happened here?
Kind of funny side story. I didn't even know I was being recorded. I thought it was a joke. One of the Aaron Plunkett from CLA was 20 feet away with a little video camera, and Malachi came up to me with a phone. I thought he was just kind of goofing around, so I was goofing around. The next day, there I am on social media being interviewed by the Malachi Nelson. So glad I didn't say anything derogatory about anybody, right? I gotta, hopefully would have edited that out if I did, but I try to keep it nice for the most part.
You did seem very chill, like you didn't know that you were being recorded, but that was a great interview from Malachi Nelson's perspective. But Blair, I got to ask you, let's do from unranked to 5-star. How would you rate Greg's skills as an interviewee?
Oh, that's Blair. A 5-star. I mean, he rambled off all his answers there. You had Malachi Nelson counting the points on his finger. I mean, 5-star without a doubt. A no-brain first-round draft pick.
I like it.
Thanks, Blair. I appreciate that.
That's so sweet. All right. Well, Greg, the main reason that we have you here is to have you give us the best out west for 2024. That's, of course, your coverage area. It's always filled with some of the top talent. So first off, big picture. How does this group of top prospects compare to previous cycles on the West Coast?
I mean, so far, so good. I think at this point in time, I think it's better than the last couple of cycles. I think last year at the end of February, which I guess we're still kind of in February, but I think we finished up California. I'll speak on specifically. We had 6 players in the top 100. I think right now we have 14 in the 2024 class from California. So obviously, a lot of those guys that are in California right now, we see those guys, I feel like, really early, and they don't all stay in there. We'll see other players from other parts of the country. As a West Coast guy, I will freely admit, the talent in the South is extremely high level and special, especially if you go into South Florida. But right now, California with 14 players in the top 100, 6 at the end of the 2023 cycle. So not a good, not a math major, but I would say that's almost double, right? I say almost. I know it's double. I'm just playing along. So yeah, no, so far so good, guys. I think it's going to be a really banner year for SoCal and Cali kids all overall.
I love it. How about Dylan Raiola? His name has, of course, already come up a few times on this show, and it will continue to be as we head into the spring. Conversation not really slowing down, considering he's the #1 prospect. So what makes him so special at the quarterback position?
Yeah, how about everything, right? I'm watching the Super Bowl. I know it's an easy comp, and everyone's been using it. But Pat Mahomes, I think there's some validity to that one. And honestly, watching Jalen Hurts, I think both those two guys kind of remind me a little bit because they're both big, strong, athletic kids. Talk about Pat Mahomes and the arm talent, be able to, just throw from different arm angles, rolling right, rolling left, baseball background, right? Pat Mahomes, area code baseball guy. Blair was just at that. I'm sure he rambled about area code baseball games last week. But that's where Dylan got his start. He's a catcher. His dad's a former lineman. And I think the world would be a better place if all quarterback dads were former offensive linemen. And I just think you look at Dylan's makeup, and there's not an ounce of prima donna or arrogance to him. He's a great locker room guy. He's a great leader. He's tough. He's physical. Again, he got that big, strong catcher's body. Intangibles off the charts. Makes all the throws creative in and outside the pocket. I can go on and on and on. I probably already have. But no, I think he's definitely a worthy guy for #1 overall. I think he's got a great chance to kind of go, run this thing all the way down to next February. He's our #1 guy so far.
I love his arm talent, Greg. You touched on it there. Arm angles, he's got the ability to improvise depending on what's happening in the pocket. I think I still want to see a little bit more athleticism out of him when he's escaping the pocket or even downfield or picking up those tough yards. But he's got all the tools, all the makeup, and all the intangibles that you like to see from a quarterback. And Greg, moving on down the list of top prospects in your region, Brandon Baker is the top offensive tackle in the class of 2024, plays at Mater Dei in the state of California. What stands out to you about his play on the field and his recruitment off the field?
Well, let's do recruitment first. Since I just talked to him last night, Notre Dame just offered him. That's kind of a big one for him. He's pretty excited about that. He will take a visit out there to South Bend. The Oregon Ducks, where I think a pretty solid leader. You know me, Blair. I'm a pretty conservative crystal baller, but but I was close, Blair. I was almost about ready to put one in, and then your boy Adrian Clem, your friend and mine, decided to go to the New England Patriots. I think that is going to affect the recruitment, at least temporarily. I think Oregon is still in the mix, but I wouldn't call them the leader right now. Locally, USC is still involved. Miami, he will visit March 4th. Ohio State will get a visit. Michigan will get a visit. So, I mean, he's got a lot of schools, a lot of national heavyweight programs that are all in there. I don't necessarily see an early decision coming out of Brandon Baker. As for what I like about him as a football player, I think you look at offensive tackle specifically, man, the length. You know, he's 6'5", but he's got like an 82, 83-inch wingspan. He's a technician. You come from modern day, you're going to be so advanced from just from a technical standpoint, the feet, the hand placement, the balance, the body control. He plays right tackle at modern day, played left guard as a sophomore. I think he's actually a left tackle at the next level, probably the hardest position to play on the offensive line, right? That's your, the quarterback's blind side unless you're blocking for Tua. But I think he's a guy who can play right or left side. He's a strong physical kid. He's got that nastiness to him that you have to have. So cliche time, Blair. He checks off, and Emily checks off all the boxes, right? You got to get that one in there. Checks off every box you can possibly want. It's just why he's our number one O-Tackle right now in 2024.
Love a good cliche. Nothing wrong with that. How about four-star athlete? Aaron Butler. He was committed to USC, but decommitted back in January, and now you've crystal balled him to Georgia. So no matter where he ends up, though, how does he project to the next level?
Yeah, so we committed to USC as a DB, and then over the past year, we kind of, I don't want to say he fell in love with it. I'll say kind of fell in like with playing receiver. And I think that's where he sees himself now at the college level. And even at the highest level, Aaron's already thinking, man, he's thinking long-term. He's thinking Sunday. I'm a receiver at that high level. And so all those schools, he likes Washington a lot. He likes Alabama. He likes LSU. They're all saying wide receiver. That's where he wants to play. And I took a visit to Georgia, and I mentioned before, I don't put a crystal ball in just for the heck of it. So I'm pretty confident. Of course, it's a fluid recruitment. These guys change their minds quite a bit. But as of right now, I think Georgia is in a good spot. He loves the coaching staff. Mentioned specifically, he likes the DBs that they have there. And why that's important for him is he said every day in practice, it's the best of the best. He said every day in practice, there's 8 or 9 NFL scouts watching me. He's like, specifically, they're going to be watching me against these elite DBs. And if I burn these guys, which he's anticipating doing, this is again him talking, when I burn these guys, I'm going to be a first-round pick. I'm going to be the first receiver taken, the Lindekoff Award. Obviously, he's not short on confidence. He's a very talented kid. So we'll see. I think he's going to decide, I want to say July-ish. Birthday is somewhere in July. So, we'll see if the Dogs can hold on to him.
Yeah, Greg, he reminds me a little bit of a player we just saw at the Polynesian Bowl, Malachi Coleman. Maybe not as freaky or as long, but I think you look at the athleticism, you look at the ranginess and just his physique and his ability to impact the game, not only on defense, but on offense, and that multifaceted background. I think it's a really good comp right there. GB, the last prospect we want to touch on is Ryan Pelham. He's the number 5 receiver in the 2024 class, has a ton of schools from a ton of offers from schools all across the country. What makes him such a coveted prospect right now?
Yeah, so I covered his older brother, Romeo. So I actually feel like I've been, watching Ryan or hearing about Ryan since he came out of the womb. Another guy, two-way player, can play some corner safety, but he's going to be a receiver at that next level. And again, he kind of, checks off everything you want to see in a receiver. Natural pass catcher, right? Really good with his hands. He's got that explosive speed, short area burst, really advanced route runner, really advanced as a route runner, can go deep. One of those guys you can kind of throw a little 3 or 4 yard hitch to, makes 3 or 4 guys miss and he's gone. He can get deep, also has the hands to be a possession guy. So, whether you want to, 3rd down and 8, go-to guy, that's Ryan Pelham. You need a home run ball, that's Ryan Pelham. You want someone on punt kick return, Ryan Pelham also. Just took a visit to USC 2 weeks ago. Ironically, USC was not in his top 10 or top 12, but whatever he cut it to was a big number. I'm just going to say 10. But I think USC is in that mix right now. Oregon is in that mix. Got a lot of national schools. He likes Ohio State. He likes Michigan. He likes Alabama. UCLA also involved locally. So I think I mentioned Oregon already, but, watch out for Oregon. But, watch out for USC. There's a lot of good local receivers in Southern California. For me, not to segue it, but probably the deepest year for SoCal receivers I've seen in the last 5 or 6 years. Ryan is one of them. And USC has a chance to land 2 or 3 of them. And I think they like Ryan Pelham quite a bit right now. And he likes them as well. So we'll see if that can be a match later on down the road.
All right, Greg, we can't let you go without telling you happy birthday.
Thanks. Happy Valentine's Day to you too. Hopefully you have a a great day, whatever you're doing. And I'm sure Blair is taking care of his lovely wife, Veronica, as well. So thanks for the birthday wishes.
It's not Valentine's Day. It is Greg Biggins' birthday. And we actually have a scouting profile for you because you check all the boxes here. So let's take a peek here. Okay, your birthday is today. You were a two-sport amateur athlete in soccer and volleyball. You covered some pretty high-profile recruitments of the Manning family. I like that thing at the bottom, though. Crystal ball prediction rate, 94.5. Greg, what kind of prospect is Greg?
Can we talk about the 2002 Angels World Series? Can we just skip ahead of me and my crystal ball rate and just say I was there? Emily, I don't know if Blair or my good friend Brendan Huffman have told you, but I was actually there for Game 7 of the 2002 World Series. And let me just say, we don't have to cheat like those Dodgers did. You know what I'm saying? We won the last true non-asterisk World Series, and I'll leave it at that. Blair knows deep in his heart of hearts who the real SoCal baseball team is, and you guys can discuss it off the air.
Blair, let him have it. It's his birthday. We'll let this one slide.
Hey, Greg, it's your birthday. Happy birthday. It's been 21 years, right, since that World Series. So hopefully, lucky 22 this upcoming season. Spring training, I saw Mike Trout just reported to Tempe, Arizona. So, it's going to happen this year for you, buddy.
I'm feeling good. Hey, let's go. Let's go.
Love it. Happy birthday. Thank you for hopping on. Appreciate it.
Always. Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, whoever lands those prospects we just discussed will definitely see a bump in their rankings. So here's how things look right now in 2024. Georgia, of course, building quite the lead. 10 commits, far and away number one. But we want to focus on number 4 right here. And to do that, we're going to bring in our friend Chris Nee, senior writer for Noles247, here to talk some Florida State. Hello there.
How are you guys?
Great. So the Noles, they currently have the 4th-ranked class in 2024 with 9 commits, to show that graphic. Before we talk specifics, though, how has Mike Norvell parlayed the success this past season on the field into recruiting momentum?
They had 3 junior days in January. It was very noticeable the amount of talent that they were getting on campus was drastically improved from what we've seen in past years here with Mike Norvell at the helm. I think the reason for that is twofold reasons. Obviously, winning's a big part of it, but another big part of it is they've been able to build relationships finally with kids. When they came in, they had the COVID year, obviously eliminated the ability for them to go on the road. They weren't able to see coaches. They weren't able to see kids. They weren't able to build relationships for that first year. They also had a bad season, so that kind of puts them behind the 8 ball. Once they started getting success, they kept getting guys on campus. They sold their vision. Kids bought into that vision. They've allowed themselves to have kids repeatedly on campus multiple times. I think they're a staff that believes they need to get a kid on campus if they're a sophomore 4, 6, maybe 8 times between then and when they make a decision to really put themselves in a position. They also want to build those relationships with the young men that they're recruiting.
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned it there a little bit, and I wanted to go more in depth about that I guess strategy, right? You're able to put yourself in the running for some of the talented players, especially in state, but it's another thing to actually put yourself in position to win those battles. Do you think the Seminoles have reached a point where they're back competing and even beating out some of the top programs for the nation's best prospects?
Well, when you look at their commitment list right now, a guy like Cam Davis is somebody that Georgia certainly wants. A guy like Jordan Pride has plenty of good options. A guy like Tawaski Abrams, very talented, speedy wide receiver. He's a kid that had very good options. I think they were ahead on a few of these guys. Luke Kromenhawk's an Owen quarterback. I think they were very far ahead on Kromenhawk. They took Luke Kromenhawk before he really played a varsity snap consistently at quarterback because he was behind an Auburn commitment a couple years ago at the high school that he's at. They've done a very good job evaluating being ahead. Now, can they go head-to-head and win? It's going to be tested. They're recruiting a guy like Landon Thomas, a former commitment for them, who's currently committed to Georgia. They kind of are playing the long game with him, trying to get him to flip back from Georgia to FSU. Nye Carr, another commitment to Georgia. Both of those kids play at Colquitt County in Moultrie, Georgia, South Georgia kids. They keep getting them on campus. They were here again in January. They're definitely kids that FSU wants. They're high-level kids. Do I think FSU can win head-to-head battles with the Georgia, the Alabamas, people of that sort? Yes. I think they've put themselves in that position. I think they have a belief that they're going to be a very, very good football team this year, a double-digit winning football team that's going to compete for the ACC crown, possibly be in the national picture. I think they believe if they do what they're going to do on the field with the relationships they're building off of it, that they're going to be able to pull in the best high school class they have in their time in Tallahassee.
Yeah, it's not just recruiting, very active in the portal as well. On our signing day show, actually, Director of Scouting Andrew Ivins accidentally called the head coach Mike Portal. It was, of course, a mistake, but also, I mean, this is something, feel free to workshop. I think it's a great nickname. But my question for you, though, is how does his heavy portal use affect recruiting?
I don't think they're ever going to shy away from the portal. One, they've been very good at it, and they've kind of figured it out. I think they unlocked the key to it a little bit ahead of the national average. You look at the class they had last year, they signed 27 total players. A third of that came directly from the portal, 9 of the 27. I think their portal strategy going forward will be to get kids that can be very good plug-and-play immediate help and guys who long-term can help strengthen a position that maybe has a void, whether it's a very young player or a very old player, kind of filling in a class that they're missing, especially if they were to lose somebody to the portal. So I don't think they're ever going to shy away from the portal. I think they're too good at it to do so. I do think they want to get stronger in the high school ranks and continue to recruit there. Mike Norvell spoke to him yesterday at a booster stop before he addressed a lot of FSU faithful. He talked about the fact that they did have 66% of their class last year come out of high school ranks. I think they understand that to some degree there's a negative recruiting tone with them being the portal kings, that maybe people are going to try to sell it that they neglect the high school ranks. They don't want it viewed that way. They don't believe it should be viewed that way, and I don't think they're going to allow it to be viewed that way long term with how they're going to recruit high school kids. But at the same time, they will still lean on the portal. They will still go get the best of the best. They think it's a essential thing that will allow them to have the best available 85 on their football roster. I don't think they're going to shy away from it. At the end of the day, they believe in talent accumulation, regardless of where that talent is coming from.
All right, before we let you go, let's hit on a few prospects. Cameron Davis is the 4th-ranked back in the country, heading to Tallahassee. So what impact can he make early for the Noles?
People that remember Cam Akers, I mean, Cam Davis reminds me a lot of them. They both played a good bit of quarterback in high school, both really athletic, big-bodied kids, both relatively smart, sharp kids. I think the transition to the college game for Cam Davis is not going to be a difficult one. He's a very, very good north-south runner, high-end speed, gets there very quickly, has a gear shift where it allows him to get going and separate from people. A physical guy who finishes runs effectively. Also got pretty soft hands. He doesn't get to show it a whole lot in high school because obviously playing quarterback most of the time. But he's a guy with the way FSU uses running backs in the passing game, I think will be effective in that regard as well.
Chris, Florida State targeted quarterback Luke Kromenhoek early, landed his commitment over a year ago, and with QB being often one of the more stressful parts of the process, and obviously the face of a recruiting class, how do you think that's going to help Mike Norvell and that staff be able to sell the program heading into the spring?
They hit a home run with Luke Kromenhoek. They were ahead of the curve on that. I think 24/7 is ahead of the curve on that compared to other people in the industry. He's a really talented, high-level passer. He's a kid that can throw to all parts of the field, strong-armed. I think his ceiling's incredibly high, but he's a really good football player today. And the best thing about Luke is that he's kind of old school at the quarterback position. I heard you guys talking about Dylan a little bit earlier and how much, I think it was Greg that said how much he liked him because of his approach, kind of a humbleness to him. Luke certainly has some of that to him too, where he's old school. He loves the game of football. He's a good kid. He likes spending time with other recruits and recruiting them, but he also just likes building relationships with guys. It's not so much he's just going to walk up to you and sales pitch you. He wants to get to know you. He's going to build a bond, and obviously if you're pretty talented, he probably wants to play with you. He's been a big piece for them, and he's one of those kids that I think bought into their vision, almost 12 months ago when he committed 11 months ago now. He bought into it before it was really a true vision, before they hit the 10-win mark like they did this past year. I think there's something to that. I think he wholeheartedly believes in what they're doing in Tallahassee.
I love it. We got a question here in the chat for you. You good to answer a Noles fan question?
Sure.
A bonus one?
Sure.
All right. Which top 50 defensive 2024 recruits does FSU have traction with, not named Charles Lester? Who else are they in play for?
Well, they stole the easy answer. I mean,
I
Charles
know,
Lester
that's
is
the point.
the easy answer. If it's not Charles Lester, trying to think who else is ranked that high right now. Kamarion Franklin's a talented young man. He's a 5-star in the composite. He's supposed to be back on campus in March. They've got traction in the sense of he keeps showing up. I believe this will be 3rd or 4th time on campus for him, but they're going to have to fight a battle there. That's going to be one where it's going to be difficult to get. But he qualifies as a top 50 kid that, they're in the game with. They're definitely chasing. But Charles Lester is the name to know in that top 50 group.
I love it. Chris, happy birthday. It's your birthday as well?
Yeah, I text Greg Biggins. I told him it's a great day when we share a birthday, but yep.
I'm
I am
telling you.
younger than Greg. Just want that to be known.
Okay, good. Nope, that is known. Make sure that the people know that. Chris, happy birthday. I think this is the first time that's ever happened on the show. Probably last time, unless we call you back here this time next year. But how exciting. Happy birthday, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Hey, be sure to keep it locked into Noles247 for all things Florida State all year long. Blair, I told you that our goal was to get to 100 likes. We are so close. So I think that's a great way to honor these birthdays, right? By hitting that like button. We're getting really close to 100 likes. That would be a great way to end the show. But we're going to do what we always do, and that is answer your viewer questions. You've sent in so many. So we're just picking a couple here, but we appreciate you guys sending in all these questions. It's really fun to kind of monitor what's going on in the chat. So this first one here is from Hannah Glynn saying, since you guys talked West Coast, Blair, who is your favorite prospect out West? That's a tough one.
Well, I'd be cheating talking Dylan Raiola again or talking Elijah Rushing. So I'm going to throw another one that I really like, and that's Elijah Brown. He's the quarterback at Mater Dei. A top 40 prospect here in this 24 class in the state of California, and a really, really good decision maker. Hadn't lost a high school game until he lost to St. John Bosco this past fall. And, he had been undefeated nearly for 3 seasons. I would assume he will try to go undefeated as a senior this fall. This is a kid who led a double-digit comeback against Bishop Gorman on the road early in the season last year with kind of their backs against the wall, trying to keep their national title hopes alive. And I really love the way the ball comes out of his hand. He's really good at just kind of dissecting the defense over the top. He's able to really, fit balls in between tight windows in the red zone near the goal line. Takes care of the football, which is huge for a quarterback, and doesn't really do the camp scene, doesn't do the 7-on-7 scene. So we forget about him a little bit. So I wanted to show him some love here on Valentine's Day because Elijah Brown is without a doubt one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
Man, hadn't lost a high school game until last fall. Man.
Yeah, and he was starting as a freshman at Mater Dei, which doesn't happen. That's a factory for quarterbacks. And he, I think, has not made people forget that Bryce Young was the quarterback before him. But he certainly kind of raised that level and raised that barometer for whoever takes over for him in 2024.
Awesome. All right, this next one is from Red Hawk. Who do you think is leading for 4-star edge Colin Simmons?
Well, just kind of scanning things quickly, he's a top 30 prospect. LSU has the only crystal ball prediction for Colin Simmons, the Duncanville edge rusher, number 3 player at his position in that 24 class, has over 40 scholarship offers already. But right now, Steve Wiltfong has that crystal ball in for the LSU Tigers. We know that Steve isn't wrong very often in that crystal ball. So it sounds like the Tigers, Brian Kelly, and that whole staff, Coach Jamar Kane, the defensive line coach, it looks like they're making a really good impression early on in that recruiting battle.
We are 20 likes away from 100. That would be amazing if we could get 100 likes during the dead period. People say, well, we're not really paying attention to recruiting right now. Nope. We will continue to do this 2 shows a week throughout the offseason, throughout the regular season. Recruiting does not slow down, and neither do we. One more question here from Mega Hamilton. Do you still think Georgia is the team to beat for Dylan Raiola, even though a crystal ball just went in for Nebraska?
You're putting me on the spot here.
That's a tough one.
Truthfully, Emily, I don't have a crystal ball prediction in, because I like USC right now, and I haven't put in the crystal ball, and that's just a pulse pick, but I like where the Trojans sit because remember, they missed out on him the first time when he committed to Ohio State. They had my early crystal ball prediction for him to end up with Lincoln Riley. He ends up committing to Ohio State. USC moves on and tries to chase DJ Lagway, who ended up choosing Florida over USC. And now Dylan Raiola is back on the market. He already took a visit to USC, met up with Lincoln Riley. His mother was able to meet the staff for the first time. And I just can't see Lincoln Riley missing on Dylan Raiola once, then on DJ Lagway, and then Dylan Raiola the third time. And I know they signed Malachi Nelson in the 2023 class. They're obviously going to be the destination school for the premier quarterbacks, especially out west, considering what we just saw out of Caleb Williams in year one. I like the Trojans. It's going to be a really, really tight battle. I know Steve likes Georgia or did like Georgia. Nebraska obviously just got the crystal ball prediction. But if I was hanging over a fire and you were kind of shaking me and telling me to put in a crystal ball, right now I would go for the Trojans, because I think Lincoln Riley doesn't miss very much, and I like the relationship that they're building with Dylan Raiola right now.
For the record, I would never put you in that situation. I'd be hanging you over a fire and asking you for a crystal ball. Maybe that's something that Steve Wiltfong does.
I know, I understand. But it just felt right in the moment.
Man,
you know,
that is insane though. Okay, so he is deciding between essentially like guaranteed Heisman, where his dad's number is retired, and also the back-to-back national champs. How do you decide?
It's a fascinating recruitment on the surface, right? When you look at just the things that are on the table. You think about being a legend and kind of stamping your own legacy at Nebraska and following in your father's footsteps and trying to bring that program back. You know how much that would mean to that fan base and to that city and to that program, which is historically one of the programs that has the best fan support in the country. And then you think about what USC would offer him and the chance to go in and compete against Malachi Nelson for that starting spot right after Caleb Williams leaves campus as maybe a two-time Heisman winner. I mean, you got to assume he's a favorite again heading into this season. And then, oh, by the way, Georgia is also there in the mix, two-time reigning national champion. It seems like the only infinity stone that they're missing from their big, whatever hand you want to call it, Kirby Smart, and how many rings he's loading up on. The five-star quarterback's the only thing that they're really missing right now. So it's a fascinating recruiting battle. I haven't put in a crystal ball prediction because I'm kind of waiting until to see what these spring visits kind of look like or what they shake out like. Right now, I like USC.
Oh my goodness. Remember the original question was about Georgia. We pivoted to USC, but that's who you're favoriting right now. We are 14 likes away from 100, so please hit that like button. We're about to say goodbye, but don't worry, it will still be up. You still have an opportunity to smash that like button. We'll see it after the fact as well. Thank you for joining us on today's show. For Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.